when a locked velvet box was discovered behind a sealed panel in Clarence House during a quiet restoration. No one anticipated what lay inside. A lost diary worn, hand-bound, and unmistakably marked by Princess Margaret's unmistakable handwriting. But what shook palace historians wasn't the diary's existence. It was what she wrote, and who she named. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The renovation team was simply instructed to modernize a forgotten corridor, nothing more. But as workers dismantled a portrait of Queen Victoria that had long hung untouched, the soft clink of wood against stone revealed something far older, far more unsettling. Behind the frame was a shallow recess, sealed with aged wallpaper and iron nails. Inside lay a crimson velvet box, discolored by time, sealed with a faded golden ribbon. It bore no royal crest, no seal of office, just the words inked in Margaret's elegant script, "For when they are ready." No one knew what to expect. But even the most seasoned royal aides weren't prepared for what was inside. When the diary was delivered discreetly to a senior palace archivist, his hands reportedly trembled as he opened the first page. Moments later, he turned ghostly pale and asked to speak to the king in private. Within the hour, security protocols were initiated. The diary was moved from Clarence House to Windsor under high-level protection. No official statement was made. In fact, no one outside the inner circle even knew what had been found until fragments of its content began to surface, whispered in elite drawing rooms and behind firmly closed doors. What made this discovery so explosive wasn't just that it was from Margaret. It was that she had deliberately hidden it. The same Margaret known for her public defiance and bold personality had chosen to bury her final words, never to be read in her lifetime. And perhaps most provocatively, insiders began murmuring that within its pages, Margaret had written of the future, not in vague royal musings, but in pointed declarations. The diary, they claimed, predicted a reckoning inside the monarchy, a collapse from within, and one woman, one name, was repeatedly hinted at as the key to salvation. Catherine. The question that spread through the palace like wildfire wasn't how the diary had remained hidden for over 2 decades. It was why Margaret had written it at all, and why her tone was one of urgency, regret, and eerie precision. It wasn't a memoir, it wasn't an account of her own life, it was a message, a coded warning. And as the inner circle pored over the pages, sentence by sentence, a chilling realization emerged. Margaret had seen something coming, something no one else dared say out loud. She hadn't just chronicled pain, she'd predicted upheaval. And with each uncovered line, the shock rippled deeper into the foundations of the royal house. But what if Margaret knew more than anyone dared believe? What if her warning wasn't just about survival, but about Catherine? In pages inked with desperation and sorrow, Margaret detailed a vision of a royal house in decline, its image shattered, its soul adrift. As whispers of scandals and fractured loyalty dominated her entries, one haunting line stood out: "Only the one with grace and pain in her eyes shall restore what we've broken." The entries shift into something darker. No longer the spirited reflections of a royal icon, these pages carry the weight of warning. Margaret, once vibrant and rebellious, had grown disillusioned with the crumbling facade of the monarchy she was born into. The diary traces her descent into frustration, not with the crown itself, but with those entrusted to protect it. She speaks of a house built on stillness, now cracking under its own silence. The mystique, the ceremony, the unspoken power, it was all fading, and she knew it. The 90s had rocked the royal brand. From Charles and Diana's public unraveling to the tabloid-fueled scrutiny of Fergie, to the growing cynicism that the institution could no longer inspire devotion, it was all there, inked in jagged, looping handwriting that trembled with barely concealed rage. Margaret had once believed in the unshakable strength of tradition. But now, she saw only erosion. She writes in veiled, poetic language, like a woman both protecting and exposing something sacred. Her words drift between metaphor and fire, between disappointment and hope. She does not name the scandals directly. Instead, she likens the monarchy to a glass cathedral with cracks invisible until too late. She describes shadows gathering not from outside but within the bloodline, and then, with a chilling clarity, she sketches the image of a woman not yet among them. "There will come a bride," she writes, "not of our shaping, not of our choosing. She will arrive not to shine but to steady, not to command but to endure. And through her silence they will find their voice." The passage is striking, even prophetic. Margaret calls her the second Princess of Wales, but not Diana, the phoenix of beauty and grief. "This one shall be the anchor." The words feel like both an elegy and a roadmap. Margaret does not mention a time, a name, or a date, but those, close to the diary, say her vision was unmistakably clear. She foresaw another woman stepping into Diana's shadow, not to compete, but to complete the legacy. A figure with lioness eyes who would walk alone through fire and be made whole not by affection, but by resilience. This figure, unnamed, began to draw immediate parallels once the diary was reviewed behind closed doors. Advisors who had worked closely with both Diana and Catherine admitted off the record that the description was not merely accurate, it was hauntingly precise. Even the skeptics paused when reading those entries. Margaret had always been dramatic, yes, but never careless, and her language, though cryptic, had a rhythm and confidence that suggested something more than reflection. It felt like resolve, a desperate belief that though the monarchy was fractured, a woman born outside its walls would one day return it to dignity. Some within the palace dismissed it as metaphor. Others quietly acknowledged that Margaret, for all her flaws, had always seen further than she let on. Her eyes missed nothing, and her words, for the first time, began to feel less like poetry and more like prophecy. But the next pages shift tone, no longer visions, but warnings laced with names and secrets. Margaret never uttered aloud. One name, underlined twice. Amidst cryptic reflections and poetic riddles, Margaret did something she rarely did in private writing. She named someone directly. And that name wasn't from her own era. It was Catherine. No title, no surname, just Catherine. That singular name, standing alone on a page dated 1977, sent a collective chill down the spines of those who read it. It wasn't surrounded by context, nor explained by lineage or connection. It simply sat there, etched with unmistakable emphasis, flanked by ominous phrasing that suggested the kind of foresight few believed Margaret capable of. And yet there it was. A woman not yet born, named in the middle of Margaret's most emotionally charged entries. Palace archivists, historians, and even long-retired royal aides were speechless. The ink had faded only slightly, but its impact was searing. How could she have known? Was it fantasy, a poetic flourish, or something more disturbing, a true prophetic moment from a royal who saw beyond her own years? Margaret didn't make this reference lightly. The pages before it were swirling with sorrow over her sister's burden and the monarchy's decline. But this page felt different. It was sharper, bolder, written with a kind of desperate clarity. "She will walk alone before they see her worth," Margaret wrote, the words separated by long dashes, as if trying to buy time between thoughts she knew would be too heavy. There was no attempt to disguise the warning. The woman in question would not be embraced by the institution. She would endure neglect, suspicion, even quiet contempt. But in the silence of that endurance, something divine would stir, something that could save the monarchy from itself. Another line followed, darker and more cryptic, a crown rejected by one and reclaimed by another. Analysts later drew an immediate line to Diana and Catherine, two women who married into the same legacy, yet carried it so differently. Margaret didn't draw a comparison out of admiration, but necessity. Diana had captivated the world through emotional transparency. Catherine, in contrast, was being sculpted by restraint. And it was this very restraint Margaret appeared to be calling the monarchy's last lifeline. A woman who didn't seek to change the crown, but to carry it without asking. As word of this entry reached select members of the royal family, debates erupted far beyond the palace gates. Scholars wrestled with the possibility of intuition becoming prediction. Was Margaret clairvoyant, or had she simply understood the inevitable trajectory of the House of Windsor? Was it insight rooted in despair, or foresight disguised as madness? Spiritual advisors close to the family were summoned, asked to interpret the message as more than metaphor. Some argued it was divine, others that it was dangerous. But in one corner of the palace, the reaction was not intellectual, it was personal. Catherine herself was discreetly briefed. What passed between her and the senior aide who delivered the pages remains a closely guarded secret. But those in her immediate circle confirmed she was changed by it. Not visibly, not dramatically. But something inside her shifted. The woman Margaret had described, the one who walks alone before they see her worth, suddenly seemed all too real. Because Catherine had indeed walked alone. Misunderstood, measured, doubted, and now named. But Margaret didn't stop at foretelling. She left instructions, veiled in riddles and one chilling phrase: "The storm begins at Sandringham." It was meant to be a quiet family, gathering a winter tradition of civility and formality. But as the diary was read aloud in fragments by a shaken Charles, all warmth drained from the room. Camilla paled. Anne stiffened. Catherine? Frozen in disbelief. Margaret's words had reached beyond the grave and ignited a firestorm. What began as an intimate moment behind closed palace doors turned rapidly into a silent crisis. Charles, visibly tense, had only intended to read a few select lines from Margaret's rediscovered diary. He hoped to offer a moment of reflection, a glimpse into his late aunt's mind. But from the moment the words crossed his lips, something shifted in the room. The passage he chose was short but sharp. "Beware the second queens who grasp, not serve. For it is not the hand that wears the ring, but the heart that holds the realm." The sentence landed like a slap. Camilla, who had for years weathered cold glances and court whispers, sat motionless, her fingers tightening around the stem of her glass. Her gaze dropped. Her silence was louder than any rebuttal. Charles paused, uncertain, but it was too late. Murmurs had already begun among the aides present in the room. Some exchanged worried looks. Others dared not look up. William, seated beside Catherine, turned sharply to his wife. His expression betrayed a storm of thoughts: shock, confusion, something unspoken. Catherine, however, remained eerily still, her eyes locked on the page in Charles's trembling hands, reading ahead even as he faltered. She was reading something only she seemed prepared to hear. The atmosphere shifted from awkward to suffocating. And then, without a word, Anne stood. Stiff, stern, silent. She walked out, her heels echoing in the vast chamber like a judge delivering a verdict. No one followed her, no one stopped her. The silence that followed was unbearable. One aide whispered, "We shouldn't have read it." Another muttered something about tradition, boundaries, and respect. But the room had already fractured. In Margaret's own words, it felt as if she had reached forward from the past to split the present down its spine. Camilla asked no questions. She didn't need to. She knew what the line implied. The phrasing had been deliberate. Second queens. The implication was cutting, undeniable. The comparison, though veiled, was devastating. It wasn't just about legitimacy, it was about purpose, about legacy, about who served the crown, and who stood in its way. Charles abruptly closed the diary. No more would be read. He ordered that the diary be taken from the room immediately and secured under palace lock. He didn't explain, he didn't need to. What was once a historical curiosity had become a live grenade. Catherine remained ated. Her face unreadable, but her silence carried weight. More than one advisor later described her as transformed in that moment, like something inside her had been confirmed. For years, she had been watched, measured, analysed, but now, for the first time, Margaret's voice had drawn a line in the royal sand, and it had placed Catherine on one side, and the rest on the other. But Catherine's reaction wasn't fear, it was something far more dangerous, awakening. Why would Margaret, bold, unapologetic Margaret, hide such revelations? In pages locked away for decades, she confesses a betrayal so deep it left her questioning her legacy. And within that turmoil, she saw the only future the monarchy could trust, one she believed she would never live to see. The deeper the palace went into the diary, the more Margaret's tone shifted from cryptic to confessional, Buried between the poetic riddles and veiled prophecies was a voice now stripped of ego, a woman reckoning with what she had allowed to happen. She spoke not as a princess, but as a witness, one who had stood beside a sister crowned by destiny, and silently watched as the weight of an empire consumed her. "We watched her carry it all," Margaret wrote with startling honesty. "We never stopped her. We never asked her to lay it down." This wasn't just regret, it was guilt etched in ink, a private admission that would have shattered royal decorum if ever revealed in her lifetime. In Margaret's eyes, the monarchy hadn't failed because of scandal or public scrutiny. It had begun to unravel the moment it demanded silent sacrifice from those it claimed to protect. Her reflections were scathing. Margaret described a house defined by emotional repression, where public duty masked private despair. She recalled how affection was rationed, how empathy was seen as weakness, and how the crown demanded stillness even as it corroded those who wore it. She didn't absolve herself. She was complicit. She had played her part in protecting the image, guarding the protocol, ignoring the pain. "We protected the walls," she wrote bitterly, "but let the people inside rot in silence." These weren't the words of a loyal courtier. They were the final confessions of a woman who knew the truth and finally dared to say it. In one especially haunting passage, she hinted at a pact between herself and Elizabeth, a secret understanding that neither would challenge the institution publicly, no matter what it cost them. "We agreed," Margaret noted, "that to question the crown was to risk tearing it open. And so we smiled and nodded and kept the frost alive." But underneath that frost, something had been brewing in Margaret's heart, an awareness that one day someone would need to break the silence they'd preserved. That someone, she believed, was Catherine. "She will not fight the way we fought," Margaret wrote. "She will endure, and that will be her rebellion." The final confession in that section of the diary was both chilling and redemptive. "If she ever reads this," Margaret wrote, "I pray she forgives us. Forgives the silence, forgives the shadows, forgives that we left her alone to walk the halls we iced in fear." And then, as if placing her final piece in a puzzle only she could see, Margaret sealed a letter. No royal insignia, no signature. Only 6 words written on the envelope. "To the woman who survives Windsor." That letter would remain unopened until a quiet moment in Kensington Palace, when Catherine, alone and shaken, found the courage. Wrapped in lavender-scented paper, untouched by time, Margaret's letter to Catherine was neither political nor formal. It was maternal, confessional, prophetic, and in it lay the keys to Catherine's transformation from silent sufferer to royal redeemer. Catherine waited until the corridors were still. The letter had arrived with no fanfare, slipped into her private quarters, hidden among correspondence no one else would ever see. She knew immediately what it was. The envelope bore no seal, yet it radiated weight. Her hands trembled as she opened it, careful not to tear the delicate folds. What she read inside did not feel like an instruction or a command. It felt like a hand reaching across time to touch her shoulder, to say, "I see you." Margaret's tone was unrecognizable from the defiant royal the world had known. It was stripped of grandeur, deeply personal, and heartbreakingly familiar. She began simply, "I know what it feels like to smile through ruin." That line alone broke something inside Catherine. For years she had walked the fine edge between duty and invisibility. She had endured public scrutiny, private dismissal, and a quiet war for respect. Now, here was a woman from a different era telling her, "You are not alone." Margaret wrote not with authority, but with empathy. She urged Catherine to lead differently, not with the armor of royalty, but with the grace of restraint. "Do not seek the throne's approval," she wrote. "It will not come. Lead anyway." There was power in that sentence, an invitation to stand tall in silence, to wield composure as a weapon. But buried deeper in the letter was a warning. Margaret referenced a second storm, one she claimed would not arrive from the outside world, but from within the very halls of the palace. "It will come quietly," she warned, "through smiles and softened tones, but its aim will be to crush what you represent." Catherine read those words over and over, understanding instinctively who they were about. The letter did not name names. It didn't need to. Tucked into the folded paper was something else, a brooch. dull with age but unmistakably regal. It had once belonged to Queen Mary and, according to Margaret's note, hadn't been worn since 1965. This, she wrote, was given to me in silence. I return it to you with the voice I never used. The gesture was overwhelming, the symbolism even more so. Margaret had passed on not just jewellery, but permission. Permission to stand apart. Permission to break the unspoken pact of silence. Permission to matter. Witnesses say Catherine wept quietly that evening. No words, no declarations, just quiet, controlled tears. And when she emerged the next morning, something about her had changed. Her posture, her presence. Even her stillness had acquired a new edge. Staff who had served her for years noted the difference immediately. One aide whispered, "It's like she finally stopped asking for permission." Margaret had written the letter not to console but to unlock, and that night she did. Catherine, once the silent consort in waiting, had finally been told she was meant to lead, and for the first time she believed it. But Catherine's awakening would not go unnoticed, and the backlash would come fast, led by a woman who saw her rise as a threat. The Queen Consort was not going to sit silently. With murmurs of Margaret's diary shaking the very foundations of royal favour, Camilla acted swiftly, discrediting, denying, and demanding it be destroyed. But what she didn't anticipate was just how far Catherine's quiet supporters were willing to go. Camilla had weathered years of judgment, endured headlines laced with venom, and carved her space beside the king through sheer resilience. But nothing had rattled her grip quite like this diary. She moved quickly, launching private inquiries into its origin, raising concerns about its authenticity, and accusing palace staff without naming names of tampering with royal history. Behind the walls of the palace, she pushed Charles to issue a private order restricting any further discussion. But Charles, now cornered between loyalty and legacy, began to waver. His once commanding voice faltered. The weight of his mother's legacy, Margaret's words, and Catherine's calm presence began to tilt the balance away from the Queen Consort's control. She could feel the shift, and it terrified her. As Camilla worked to silence the story, something even more dangerous began to rise: quiet, calculated solidarity. Anne, ever the traditionalist, was the first to reach out privately to Catherine. A short conversation, no warmth, but unmistakable support. Then came Sophie, more vocal, encouraging Catherine not to retreat. These weren't public endorsements, they were strategic alignments, born from years of watching, listening, and understanding who Catherine truly was behind the polished exterior. Meanwhile, in a development that blindsided the palace, excerpts of Margaret's diary began circulating online, posted anonymously, but with such specificity and tone that their authenticity became undeniable. One excerpt in particular exploded across headlines: "She will steady the house not through conquest, but calm. The world will not cheer, but the crown will survive." The public reaction was immediate and electric. Overnight, Catherine was being called the chosen stabilizer. Palace aides found themselves pulled into a widening divide. Some remained loyal to Camilla, insisting Margaret's writings were exaggerated, or worse, fabricated to manipulate perception. Others, especially younger aides and long-time Elizabeth loyalists, quietly moved toward Catherine's corner. They spoke of her restraint, her unwavering sense of duty, her ability to absorb chaos without crumbling. Factions began forming, unspoken but clearly felt. Every hallway, every whisper, every glance now carried the weight of division. Camilla's efforts to extinguish the fire had only poured gasoline on it. In desperation, the Queen Consort attempted to force a formal statement through the palace communications team to denounce the diary's contents. But by then, the institution had already lost control of the narrative. The public, hungry for transparency and disillusioned with the past, clung to Margaret's words like scripture. Camilla had failed to anticipate that Margaret, even from beyond the grave, held more trust than the living. The harder she tried to erase the diary, the more powerful it became. And Catherine? She said nothing. She released no statement, gave no interview. And yet her silence grew louder than any royal proclamation in years. And then came the twist no one saw coming, a second volume hidden beneath a false drawer, one entry dated just months before Margaret's death. They thought the revelations were over. But when restorers returned to Clarence House to finalize the renovation, a carpenter stumbled upon a false bottom drawer and inside, another diary. Margaret's final words, and in them, a prediction that sent shivers down the spines of everyone who read it. The second volume was nothing like the first. It was smaller, stripped of the florid language and metaphor that had once filled her pages. This was leaner, sharper, every word deliberate, every sentence carved like prophecy. It read not as memory, but as message. The handwriting was weaker, but no less intentional. Margaret, clearly aware her time was nearing its end, had poured her final thoughts into this hidden journal. And what she revealed was not a reflection of the past, but a vision of what was still to come. At the heart of it was a phrase that would haunt every reader. The crown will be broken to be reborn. Not lost, not abandoned, but shattered first, as a necessary step toward survival. It was more than unsettling, it was seismic. Throughout the final entries, Margaret spoke of a figure she referred to only as the one who holds both fire and silence. She never gave a name, never described a face, but by now, no one needed her to. The metaphor was painfully clear. Fire, in her defiance to be erased. Silence, in her choice not to fight publicly. Catherine. It had always been Catherine. Margaret described her not as a saviour, but as a fulcrum one whose existence would determine whether the monarchy rotted from within or was reforged through quiet strength. And then came a chilling line, written with unmistakable urgency: she will rise not when asked, but when left with no choice. Margaret knew the moment would not come through ceremony or inheritance. It would be thrust upon her through crisis, betrayal, and pain. The diary continued with references to what Margaret called the turning, a point where loyalty would fracture and those closest would become strangers. She wrote of a gathering where truth would be tested, and a woman would stand alone, holding not power but clarity. Catherine would not command with titles or speak with force. She would endure, and that endurance, Margaret insisted, would either save or doom the institution. But it was the final page that changed everything. 6 words that stopped everyone in their tracks. The monarchy will survive, but only if she does not flinch. No date, no explanation, just a final warning, so cryptic it read like scripture. The second diary, once discovered, was not discussed publicly. But its contents spread like wildfire within the palace. For those who had doubted the first volume, the second forced them into silence. This was not fabrication, it was not theatre. Margaret had seen something, or believed she had. And her conviction was so powerful, so detailed, that it redefined every dynamic within the firm. The message was no longer about the past, it was a map of the future. And Catherine, now fully aware of what Margaret had placed upon her shoulders, understood the cost. As palace walls tremble and loyalties fracture, only one question remains. What will Catherine choose, self-preservation or the crown? Against pressure, against isolation, against rivals within her own walls, Catherine rose. Not in noise, but in poise. Not by command, but by conviction. As Margaret predicted, she became the quiet force that saved a legacy built on silence, sacrifice, and storm. The shift began slowly, almost imperceptibly. Catherine, long seen as dutiful but deferential, began making quiet but strategic moves within the royal sphere. She assumed greater control over her patronages, not as ceremonial figurehead, but as an active decision-maker. Institutions long seen as outdated were reimagined. Out-of-touch initiatives were replaced with bold, modern projects aimed at relevance, not tradition. She restructured, realigned, and redirected the image of the crown, less polished, more human. Her speeches grew sharper, her presence more commanding, her silences more deliberate. Every step she took echoed Margaret's words. Endurance over theatrics, purpose over power. As the palace tried to recalibrate, the public surged ahead. News of the diaries had spilled beyond British borders, sparking global curiosity and debate. The Garrett prophecy became a digital wildfire dissected in documentaries, podcasts, op-eds, and comment sections. And as more began to believe in Margaret's vision, Catherine's approval ratings soared. She wasn't simply admired, she was believed in. She became a symbol, not just of the monarchy's future, but of the cost it exacts on those who serve it with dignity. For every harsh headline, for every quiet insult she had swallowed, for every time she had been underestimated, Catherine was now being repaid in loyalty, reverence, and renewed purpose. Inside the palace, even William began to speak differently. In an unrecorded conversation with a senior aide, he is said to have reflected quietly, "She saved more than me. She saved us all." And for many, that sentiment was more than romantic. It was reality. Without Catherine's restraint, her refusal to escalate when others provoked, her insistence on stability when the monarchy was fraying there, might not have been anything left to steady. Her strength wasn't forged in fury. It was molded in silence, in the stillness where real power breathes. Then came the quiet confirmation no one expected. Queen Elizabeth's former aide, known for her silence and unwavering discretion, spoke publicly for the first time in years. In a brief statement, she said simply, "Her Majesty always believed Catherine was chosen not by blood, not by destiny, but by character." And with that, the last thread of resistance unraveled. Margaret's prophecy was no longer a hidden page, it was a fulfilled vision. In the final chapter of this transformation, a private ceremony was held in the Kensington Palace gardens. There were no cameras, no grand speeches, just a simple bench facing the roses Margaret once tended, and one woman standing quietly in its shadow. Catherine. No crown, no audience, just reverence. She laid a single bloom, white and fragrant, Bene, ath the plaque now mounted there. It read, "In silence, she saw the storm. In stillness, she saved the house." And as the sun set on that hidden garden bench, where Margaret once sat alone, a new chapter began, written not in prophecy, but in purpose. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.